My apologies for the delay. We had testimony I needed to give in the Natural Resources Committee, and I appreciate your patience. We have a very important hearing here. This is we've done a series of hearings on the Secret Service, and first and foremost, let me thank the ranking member in the bipartisan way in which we've been moving forward to dealing with this very sensitive and subject. The Secret Service has not been subject to much oversight over the last few decades, but it is a vital part of the mission of the United States Congress, and I think it is a good, healthy thing for all of us to do. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the Secret Service for going through a very tough, rigorous, long campaign season with an immense amount of travel and work. And by any account, Secret Service has had a good year. For everything from the election to the visit from the Pope, there are a host of things that the Secret Service has been called on to do. The United Nations, there's a lot of praise that is due to the men and women who are on the front lines. But we have to deal with some realities of things that we pointed out over the last couple of years. And so this hearing is going to touch on a variety of topics, but first and foremost, I want to start and end by thanking the men and women who are doing this hard work. By our estimation, almost every single agent in the Secret Service has performed overtime for which they have not been compensated. And I want to those of you that are watching to digest this. We know the men and women are committed to this mission, but it is terribly unfair to not receive compensation for doing so. This is not a volunteer job. And when you take yourself and put your life on the line to protect others and protect this nation, when you're away from your family or just away, you should get compensated for that, and we need to address that. We have other problems that need to be fixed. I have, and I know members on both sides of the aisle have questions about the mission of the Secret Service, because one of their prime missions is about cybersecurity. And there are, I think, very legitimate questions. I have deep questions about the protective mission as well as the cyber mission, because it is taking the majority of the time to engage in the cyber mission. We'll talk some more about that. And then one thing that is terribly frustrating and we will not tolerate on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee in Congress, and that is the lack of cooperation in doing our own investigation and working with the Secret Service. You do not get to hide things. That is not an option for the Secret Service. And yet we continue to deal with this, and we've issued subpoenas that have not been responded to. And that is just simply not acceptable. But let's go through some of the details. According to data provided to the committee, 1,077 employees, 90% of whom are agents, worked unpaid overtime hours in support of the presidential election in 2016. Now, there are many law enforcement agencies that enforce caps paid overtime for their hardworking personnel, and I'm not suggesting today that these caps should be totally disregarded or permanently lifted for the Secret Service. You know, we've had a number of hearings. We had a mission panel that was assembled, outside individuals who came together and talked about the improper staffing levels that have led to this. The Secret Service, at its peak, had a staffing level of 7,024 employees. This was in 2011. That number declined every year until the beginning of this year, when the agency had 6,289 employees. The staffing numbers are beginning to improve and are now at 6,507 employees, with 3,300 special agents, 1,400 uniformed division officers, and roughly 1,700 administrative and technical personnel. But by all accounts, you're some 500 to 1,000 people short of where you should be. And you can't just go grab somebody, hand them a gun, and say, hey, go protect the President or go protect the White House. You can't do that. I recognize that it is difficult to vet, train, and get somebody all the way through the process without them dropping out. We want the best of the best. But there is a problem that snowballs in that when you don't have the proper staffing levels, you are leaning on people to go through some tremendous efforts. we have some stories that were provided to us that I want to read some excerpts of. Okay, these are agents serving in various parts of the country, and these are quotes. During this year, I've missed holidays, birthdays, and other life events. Often I've been back off my campaign rotation. I've been grabbed for in-town protective assignments or out-of-town assignments for POTUS or VPOTUS. In total, I've been out of the district and away from home for close to 8 months this year. An agent in Chicago, during this campaign, by the end of the year, I will have exceeded my pay cap by close to $25,000. I've been on almost every campaign rotation and back-to-back travel assignments. The pace has been terrible. I can't even remember the last time I've been in the office for 2 days in a row. This has been ridiculous. It's far worse than 2012 campaign. Thankfully, I'm not married, but if I was, I'd probably be divorced by now. Here's another agent. I've been in the Secret Service for almost 25 years, been involved in every campaign since I've been on the job. We thought the 2000 campaign was the worst, but this makes all the past campaigns pale in comparison. I've been one of the detailed leaders since beginning this campaign, and I'm currently over $60,000 over my pay cap. This is on top of the normal amount of salary I don't receive due to the pay cap, which I expect to lose money on during the non-campaign year. This has been rubbing salt in a wound. We give all we have, our lives, completely disrupted, and we don't see any benefit from the sacrifice. We're losing people. Recruiting has been tough to do, as not many want to do this job, and we're doing nothing to incentivize people to apply or to stay. I have colleagues that were in the same level that have left the job for private sector opportunities. This never happened in the past, and it should be a wake-up call to headquarters in the Hill about the cost and benefit analysis. Making the service has nothing to combat the sentiment that sacrifice is just not worth it. Another agent, my wife keeps asking me, what is the benefit? And I don't have an answer. I have another agent. We are busier than ever. Staffing has become rolling people from one assignment to another with no break. We're all at near our pay cap, which adds to the frustration. I've had things in my house I can't fix. I've had to pay someone else to do. I've had increase in my lawn service contract to do things I would normally do. My children don't see me. Another agent, I'm $25,000 over my pay cap. My average work week is 90 hours. I'm away from my family for weeks at a time, missing out on various functions for school-age children. My wife feels as though she's a single mother and there's no financial benefit. I'm not getting paid. Another agent, every hour of OT worked is not paid. I don't get paid for the work that I do. Another agent, I average 43 days before I get a day off. It goes on and on. My guess is if we sat down with every agent, they got the same story. And that has to change. That's a management problem. That's not an agent in the field's problem. That is a management problem. And one of the things that we see is you can't even tell us how many hours they worked and how much they are doing overtime. Because last time we talked, you didn't even have a system to track this sort of thing. So we have got to solve this. I don't want to create a long-term incentive and say, hey, we're just going to pay this in perpetuity forever. You've got to have the tools to actually solve it. It is dangerous to the president, the vice president, the incoming president, their family, to have somebody who's working a 90-hour week, who's tired, exhausted, and not getting paid. That's not a formula for success, ladies and gentlemen. That has to be solved. The Secret Service has developed and begun implementing a human capital plan that will increase its staffing level to between 8,000 and 9,000 employees by the next presidential election in 2020. So we have 6,500 now, but trying to get to 8,000 to 9,000 people, and we want to hear about how you're going to do this. In the meantime, I do plan to introduce legislation, in fact I did it last night, that will raise the cap for the 2016 election cycle, providing back pay for uncompensated overtime. There is, to the men and women who are watching this, there is relief if we can get this bill passed. And we want to make sure that you get paid for your overtime. I don't know that we can pay for every single hour of every single thing. I don't know that the Secret Service can even track it. But that is what we're trying to do. The Secret Service staffing problems are not caused solely by funding issues. In fact, it should be noted that Congress has enacted more funding than the preceding year every single year in a row with the exception of the year 2006, or since 2006. With one exception, every year, Secret Service budget has gone up, but the staffing levels have gone down. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that we're not taking care of the of the staffing levels that should be there, and that is on the Secret Service itself. Concerns also remain as Secret Service employees are burdened by their increasing non-essential investigative and cyber-related missions that may distract from the core mission of protecting the President and other protectees. If you average it out, and it's not true for every person, but if you take the 60,000 feet and you average it out, agents spend about 1/3 of their time protecting in protection-related activities during non-presidential election years. Protection-related activities increase to about half their time during presidential election times, which begs the question, could we, with the existing force, if they were just doing the protective mission, which is a massive, important mission to the United States, could they cover all of this without having to have 90-hour to 100-hour work weeks? The answer is yes. We think we could actually get there. If the Secret Service focused all of its resources on the protective mission, then the overtime issue before us may not be there at all. I will continue to work with members on both sides of the aisle to figure out how we actually do this. Casting further doubt on the Secret Service maintaining two separate and distinct missions are issues raised by the Inspector General report, critical of the Secret Service's handling of its own information technology systems. The DHS Inspector General, who's here with us today, recently found that the Secret Service's information technology systems, which contain a wealth of extremely sensitive information, are, quote, vulnerable to unauthorized access and disclosure, end quote. A DHS OIG employee who met with our staff referred to the Secret Service IT systems as the worst in all of Homeland Security, and yet they're supposed to be the ones protecting the nation from everything that we do. And a lot of people do a lot of good work, but that mission is growing and expanding, and it's going global. It's already gone global. It went global a long time ago. The employee indicated the audit should have only taken a few days, but it took months because of how unsecure the systems were and because the Secret Service lacked basic information technology security knowledge. The matters are made worse by the troubling culture of mishandling sensitive information. Additionally, when meeting with the Homeland Security and Secret Service officials, we learned the improper access and disclosure of sensitive information was so commonplace that Secret Service employees didn't even know it was against the rules to do so. This is how arcane the Secret Service process is. Applicants must email sensitive background forms that the Secret Service then prints, stores, and then manually re-inputs them into the system. Do you know how many man-hours are wasted on that, doing that in that system? We have asked the Inspector General to investigate. If the Secret Service is committed to reform, then the agency must also be committed to ensuring top leadership is above reproach and worthy of respect from those that they lead. They are one of the most revered law enforcement agencies on the planet, but after we saw Cartagena, Secret Service employees believed there was a double standard for top leadership, that depending on who you knew and what your position was, you could be promoted despite misconduct. It is imperative that this belief be completely wiped clean in order to truly transform the agency. Currently, the Secret Service is refusing to comply with the duly issued subpoena. The documents in question contain serious misconduct at the senior-most levels of the agency. On May 20th, we requested information related to any past misconduct committed or alleged by senior officials at the GS-15 level or above. On September 2nd, given their non-response, we issued a subpoena for those documents. Today, the production is still not complete. We did receive a trove of documents late last night. We shouldn't have to have a hearing to compel that, but the names have been redacted. The names have been redacted. We can't conduct this. We can't look at do our proper oversight with all the redactions. On this one page here, I can show you, there's 22 redactions on one page of duly issued subpoenaed material. The committee understands there are more than 40 officials of roughly a universe of about 300. There are roughly 40 individuals out of 300 at the GS-15 level or above, including a recently promoted assistant director who have misconduct in their personnel record, either alleged or proven. Based on materials the committee has reviewed, the misconduct in question includes transmitting hardcore pornography on government computers, racially charged messages, visiting strip clubs during working hours using government vehicles, impersonating an FBI or FBI agent or a DEA agent, improper relationships within the workforce, domestic violence, and sexist conduct. The committee has long held that senior leaders must be held to the same standard as the rank-and-file employees. The reason this was highlighted is because when given a survey, anonymous survey, the Secret Service employees told us only 22% of the Secret Service employees believe that senior leaders maintain high standards of honesty and integrity. Think about that. More than 79% of Secret Service employees don't believe that senior leaders act honestly and with integrity. Of course we're going to look into this. That's one of the most stunning numbers we've ever seen pop at us on these surveys. And there's a reason why we do these surveys, is so we can highlight this. But we don't know if you've cleaned this up. We don't know if you've helped solve this. And it's not good enough to just say, oh yeah, we're addressing it, when you won't share the information with the committee. There have been some positive reforms. This committee's bipartisan December 15th report and the December 2014 Blue Ribbon Panel report made extensive recommendations for reform. The Secret Service has taken steps to implement these recommendations and begun to correct its mistakes. But until the Secret Service takes seriously the character of its own senior leadership, it cannot hope to recruit and retain the type of workforce it needs to regain its prestigious position as history has known. The committee is dedicated to reforming the agency to make sure it is as successful as possible and has a zero-fail mission. Again, we appreciate the good work of the men and women who have gone through a very rigorous campaign schedule, but that has not let up. They still have a lot of protection to do, and we thank them for that service. We'll now recognize the ranking member.